All right, let's go.
Hello! I hope you all can hear
Hello.
us. We still need to probably adjust some of the volume for us, so chat, please tell us if you can hear us or not hear us.
Hello.
And I still have opened up the sound on the Twitch chat. Now it should be good. Awesome. Just yell at us if any one of us is low voice, okay?
Yeah, we're going to need some feedback from you because Twitch locked our ability to sound check behind a paywall. Yay, capitalism.
Yay! So yeah, I'm not adding any music right now on this panel since it's gonna be on the same settings as Ninth Feather. So we'll.
So you get music or me?
Yes. And I would rather have my co-panelist in on this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Feel valued.
I hope everyone is having a good day so far. This is my first panel, so this is gonna be fun. It's Nine's second, I think.
Yes, it is my second. I gave one live panel at my last con, which is hopefully not my last chance to go to a con. Yay, COVID. But last year, which was a small local panel, I think there were 5 people in the audience because I like small fandoms.
Yay! So, Voice of the Legion, which one is it that you can't really hear? Is it both of us? Because then I can just adjust it before we start. Yes, figured. Give me a moment, and... Okay, you try and talk now, Ninth, and should be good.
Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
Well, we are going to have our little presentation, as you see on the screen. We also want to have open up for questions and talk to the chat when we finish as well. So we hope to have at least, I don't know, 15 minutes at the end. So if you guys want to contribute then, that will be awesome.
That'll also give you guys some time to transition to wherever you're going next if you go to another panel. And, look around the artist alley, and there's some cool stuff there too.
Yes.
And, go shitpost in the chat.
So much shitposting. It's great. It's amazing. You guys have been amazing so far. We are 1-2. I think we are more or less ready to start.
Yeah.
Holy shit! 54 people in the Twitch stream.
It still remains surprised that there are 54 people in this entire fandom.
Yes. So, if everyone is ready, I think we are ready to start. So, welcome. Our panel is called Physical and Mental Illness in Kagerou Project, and up on the screen you also see our social media. This will at some point be recorded and uploaded on YouTube, so if you want to go back and listen to this later, that is fine.
Thanks again for coming, y'all.
Yes. Overview. Who are we? Well, we just introduced ourselves a little bit, but I am the Fab Hawk. I got into Kagerou Project back when the anime aired, and then I fell into the music and manga and light novel. Not read all of the manga or the light novel, even though I have most of the light novel. Yay. Procrastination. Don't I know it?
And I'm Ninth Feather. I got into Kagerou Project just a little bit before the anime came out, around the end of 2014. Yeah. So I was here when the last couple of songs came. And then I watched the anime. I had some feelings about that, and I've read some of the light novels. And obviously, my primary route is the music route because, sometimes we just have feelings about Vocaloid songs. So, as far as what this panel is about,
yes.
Well, we have the title there. Physical and mental illness and we're going to discuss. Go ahead.
Yes, we are going to discuss a couple of characters and do sort of. I wouldn't really call it case studies, but we're going to go through 5 characters. They all have different things, probably, that we can talk to for about in like, hours for hours. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do about a couple of them. So that's going to be fun. And as we said, at the end, we want to have open up and talk to you guys for a little bit. We'll probably hang around Discord as well later on too, in case anyone want to chat. So without further ado, let's get started.
Ooh.
Yes, our first one is Takane and narcolepsy. So we're gonna go a little bit through both actual symptoms as well as how Takane is represented and compare it a little bit to narcolepsy and later the other things we're gonna go through in media. And yeah, you'll see as we go along. So for actual symptoms from narcolepsy has several ones. Usually the one we most know about is the excessive daytime sleepiness and randomly falling asleep, which is one symptoms, but not the only one. Cataplexy is another one where intense emotions can cause muscle weakness. Sleep paralysis, which can be very scary, don't recommend it. Hallucinations, and fragmented sleep. So even though you have random times of sleeping, you have trouble sleeping at all the times. So, Takane. She shows the symptoms of being tired, as you see it in the screenshot we have here. And cataplexy in the anime, in which episode is that? Episode 6, I think. She collapses in the school when she realizes she needs to run to Haruka. Other than that, that's mostly the main symptoms we see her show, at least on screen. She's stated to have it. We know she is. It interferes with her studies, and she's been in the hospital for it, and things like that. But we don't really see a whole lot of her symptoms out of that. Besides that, though comparing it to other cases, there's not really a lot. Portgas DAs from One Piece is shown to have it, but I mean. It's mostly used as a joke. I think only joke, really. Mikey Waters, which is the main character from My Own Private Idaho, also has it, but neither of us have watched that. And we also know there are certain book characters that has it. Again, we have not read it, so there's not really a lot of representation about it that we could find. So Takane is probably one of the better ones, I would say. So here's the representation. You tried, Jin. That is our conclusion. And her narcolepsy is not the most realistic. However, it is notable that it's not a joke in the series. It's never seen as a joke. It is a quite serious condition she has and affects her quite a bit. And while it's not a perfect representation, it is far more than we get from a lot of other things. So we like to have some improvement, but he made an effort. And props for that. Second one. A little bit more complicated, I think. Well, not complicated, that's not the right word. Survivor's guilt for Hibiya. Mind you, I think all of them have some kind of level of survivor's guilt, but Hibiya, considering a certain music video, definitely fits.
Thought he was the easiest one to talk about since it's the biggest part of his arc as compared to some of the other characters.
Yes. So, actual symptoms of survivor's guilt. It generally can occur in relation to traumatic events or deaths. When a person survives an event that others did not, it can lead to feelings of guilt. It is it can be a symptom of PTSD, which, by the way, we are not medical professionals. We do not try to diagnose anyone here. But we are more looking at what we can see in the media and then trying to draw some conclusions. So, yes, people with survivor's guilt can often have symptoms of PTSD, such as sleep problems and lack of motivation and flashbacks, nausea and irritability, and anger. And they generally feel guilty about a couple of different things. Surviving, well, a lot of us didn't, or they might feel guilty about what they did or did not do during whatever traumatic event that happened. So Hibiya's survivor's guilt, probably one of the best songs that is shown in is Otsukimi Recital, when Momo tries to cheer Hibiya up. We can also look at the other equivalent parts of the Kagerou project in the manga and light novel and so on. We see he has flashbacks, and his personality, or well, his behavior is definitely being affected and dictated by what happened in the heat haze. And yeah, he shows several symptoms of survivor's guilt and PTSD during that. Other depictions of survivor's guilt, because we do need to have some comparisons. Again, Ace from One Piece, which is a bit complicated, and there's probably quite a bit of spoilers in there, even though it's like 12 years old. Emi Yashiro from the Fate series, where it's a big part of his character arc. For anyone who is interested in the Fate series. Katniss Everdeen, Hunger Games. If anyone has seen the movies, she's a very clear example of that. The Doctor, mostly referring to the new post Time War Doctor, and of course Bruce Wayne. I mean, he does end up after having his parents killed in front of him, dress up as a bat and go fight crime.
It's not necessarily what you normally associate with dealing with survivor's guilt, but it is a big part of how he's written, especially in modern comics.
Yes. So, Hibiya as a representation of survivor's guilt. Like a lot of others, it's not really stated in universe. It's more something the audience need to come to as like the conclusion they need to come to themselves. But looking at the symptoms, we definitely see that he has so. And it's pretty realistic, at least in some sense, we would say. Third case. Heart disease, probably. Haruka. My boy. I love him. He's great. He's my precious boy. I can go on and gush about him forever. So
unfortunately, we only have 1 hour panel and not 60 days, so Hawk cannot vent all of her Haruka feelings.
Yeah, too bad. That's not what this panel is about. But he's my boy. Okay, actually continuing on now. So, heart disease. We don't know a lot about Haruka, so talking about his specific condition is kind of hard because we don't know the specifics. We just know heart disease or something. So there are many types of diseases, and it can affect in a lot of different ways. But there are a couple of pretty common symptoms like chest pain, breathlessness, and heart palpitations. On the right side here, you see also a lot of different types of heart problems you can have, and we don't really know which one he has. So I would like to know more, but we don't. As far as I know, if anyone actually in chat knows, that would be great to tell us afterwards. So, his illness in Kagerou project. He has attacks which lands him in hospital a lot, and he's both fatigued and he's breathless at times, which is in line with him being ill. Uh, but a lot of people also with heart diseases has to be careful with their food, especially with cholesterol. Haruka loves food so much. He definitely does not need to look at his cholesterol. So that's a thing, which is probably not the most accurate. So this leads actually into something called mysterious anime disease, or fantasy TB as we call it, or TV tropes soap opera disease, which it relates to. Soap opera disease is generally known as a trope in which a disease is difficult to diagnose and often exhibit vague symptoms, often fatal, but the victim can linger on for a long, long time. This also roots back to Victorian romance novels. Those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which is more of a precursor. These tropes kind of allow authors to create characters which are often critically ill, but only have certain symptoms or have symptoms when they are convenient. Haruka does lean a little bit into these tropes in different ways. He is the one that is pretty sick and the one that's most visibly sick. And we do see it's very serious. We do see it's the effect it has on him, but again, it's very vague, which leads us to. Actually, we're gonna compare him first because we got this slide. Haha. Again, this is not specifically heart diseases as much as the vague anime sickness. As examples here, we got Ukitake from Bleach, Son Goku, which I think was actually specified to having a heart disease. And
Yeah,
Itachi.
you said he was.
Yes. Which is very much convenience for the plot.
Also, in answer to the chat, yes, Haruka's mom did have the same disease he did, but I'm not sure. Maybe somebody in the chat does know, but as far as I can tell, they didn't tell us anything more about Haruka's mom's disease than they did about Haruka's disease. Presumably it was genetic, but that only narrows it down so much since a lot of heart diseases are genetic or have genetic components.
Yes, a lot of heart diseases are, well, not everyone in that like are necessarily get it, but they are more dispositioned to get it through a virus due to their genetics, which is quite possibly what happened to Haruka, but we have no really proof of that. So, Haruka is a representation of heart disease. While nothing can explicitly contradict it, it's still pretty vague in terms of his symptoms. We would have liked more symptoms that could have made it more explicit, but it's still very clear that he is very ill and that it impacts his life severely. And as we know, it's a big part of his storyline. I mean, look at what happened and what created Konoha. Come on. Then, bonus round. Take it away, Ninth.
All right, give me a second. We've got a little bit of lag between Twitch and your PowerPoint. So, Haruka as a wheelchair user. So, in the Summertime Record post-time loop video, we see Haruka using a wheelchair. Canon never really clarifies why he is using a wheelchair, to my knowledge. It's possible that there's a piece of media that I haven't read that gives more information. If you do know about this, feel free to drop it in the chat. But we know from real life that a lot of people use wheelchairs if they have heart disease for fatigue reasons, because they are physically able to walk, but walking for long distances can tire them out and put unnecessary strain on their heart. That said, the wheelchair also might be intended as a visual marker of Haruka's poor health, or as a visual marker of the fact that he's still in the hospital. Next slide.
Yes. I have changed. It's just this chat. The stream is slow. Ninth.
Stream.
Yay.
So, Haruka being depicted as a wheelchair user who has the ability to stand is actually really cool because that's a rare type of representation. We do see him stand in the video, just for anybody who's not remembering it.
Yep.
but um, would be kind of nice for Canon to actually clarify exactly why Haruka is using a wheelchair, but there's also that thing where every single media that has anyone who's using a wheelchair has to have a dramatic reveal of why they are using the wheelchair, usually with a lot of crying and flashbacks to how they got injured, and it's always that they got injured in a tragic accident. And it's kind of nice that maybe Haruka's story doesn't involve all of those tropes.
Would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, next slide.
So, our next focus is, well, he's my favorite boy. He's still kind of a trash gremlin, but he's my favorite boy.
He's your boy.
Hikikomori in Depression, Kisaragi Shintaro. Please change the slide.
Yes, I've done that. For the chat, by the way, I am the one controlling the slides. She's seeing it from the stream, that's why there's lag.
Yes, and also just to clarify, another reason why there's lag is that she is on one continent and I am on another.
Yes.
We're doing this. We're making this happen.
Yes, he did have slippers.
So, first we're going to talk about actual hikikomori. So, according to the definition, which was set by the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, not by a medical body, hikikomori are people who withdrawn from social activities and center their lives around their home, and they don't attend work or school. Also, there's generally only people are only considered hikikomori when there's not another mental health condition that's in play. That said, there's still a lot of debate in the psychology community about who counts as a hikikomori and who does not. Next slide, please.
Yes. It is changed.
Thank you. So, as far as Shintaro and how he shows symptoms of this condition, he leaves school after finding out about Ayano's presumed suicide, which we can argue about that, but anyhow, um, basically his withdrawal from people is portrayed as directly related to the trauma of finding out that his friends respectively disappeared and committed suicide rather than as um, related to anything like social pressure or a lack of desire to engage in school. That said, he does avoid engaging with schoolwork or anything social in a way that's really close to what you would expect from a hikikomori in real life. Next slide.
Yep.
There's a lot of representation of hikikomori in anime. Uh, Probably because hikikomori are actually one of the bigger demographics. Like, they are expected to be watching a lot of anime, so there's a lot of what you could see as positive representation of them in anime. A lot of the ones in the series Eden of the East, which some of you might have heard of, but it wasn't that popular in the West, are actually fairly realistic. That's where the picture is from. There's that shoujo series, The Wallflower, or Yamato Nadeshiko Shichianje, which focuses on a female hikikomori character who slowly leaves her room. The part with the four-boy harem, that's not that realistic, but I think we can let it pass.
It's anime.
There's also the series Welcome to the NHK, which does a mixed job with the portrayal of hikikomori. It's realistic at times, and at times it gets a little bit grimdark.
Yes.
Next slide.
Yes, also Kovov Marin, you are right. He did show symptoms of being depressed before this incident.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's change the slide.
So, other hikikomori media part 2, because there was a lot of representation that's sort of relevant to how we talk about Shintaro. The anime Chaos Head is more of the negative stuff. It basically draws on hikikomori stereotypes and then doesn't actually follow through. Nobody in this anime is really hikikomori. Nobody in this anime is telling you the truth. The protagonists of No Game No Life are portrayed as hikikomori for like half an episode, then they get isekai'd and are promptly normal, well-adjusted people once they get to play games all the time. And there's an American novel called Hikikomori and the Rental Sister. Um, I would not recommend this novel to my worst enemy. It's about a character with PTSD and depression, and also he cheats on his wife. It's wonderful. Next slide.
Yep.
So, as far as Shintaro as a representation of hikikomori stereotypes in anime, he kind of feeds into some problematic tropes because they are an actual group of arguably mentally ill people in Japan. While I love him with my whole heart, he perpetuates some problematic stereotypes, which is that hikikomori are all retreating from society directly because of depression or trauma. And since that's not necessarily the case for a lot of real hikikomori, like a lot of them cite things like social pressure or just not wanting to engage with elements of Japanese society, having things like this out in the media can actually cause problems for them. So these kinds of stereotypes are not great. Next slide.
Yep.
Basically, Shintaro is an excellent character. He's not a particularly accurate representation of a hikikomori, but you know what he is? He's a fairly interesting representation of depression, which is what we're going to talk about next. Next slide.
Yay! That's fun.
Yay, depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So fun.
Depression is a common but serious mood disorder. There's a fairly wide variety of symptoms, ranging from persistent feelings of sadness or emptiness, more physical symptoms like fatigue and sleep disturbances, loss of interest in hobbies, and of course, the more stereotyped or at least better known symptoms like feelings of suicidal thoughts and desire to self harm. If you're experiencing any of these symptoms, please seek out a therapist, a helpline, or at least consider talking to a friend. Thank you. Again, we are not professionals. However, this is because this is a potentially triggering topic, we feel that it's probably necessary to bring that up. Thank you.
Yay.
Okay, major life changes, trauma, and stress can all put you at a higher risk of depression. If you have a depressed mood that lasts more than 2 years, it's called dysmorphia or persistent depression disorder. There are a number of ways to treat depression, but in general, therapy and medication are most accepted. Changes in sleep, exercise, and changes in eating are all considered supplementary treatments. Next slide. Project. He exhibits a lot of depression symptoms, especially in Root X, but not only in Root X. Sorry, double X. However, we're saying that. He's irritable. His sleep patterns are extremely irregular. He's really unhealthily self-critical, and he leaves behind old hobbies like the whole was working on Vocaloid and then just abruptly stops. Also, we do know that he tries to or actually does kill himself depending on the route. Next slide. Please don't get carried away with the suicide memes in the chat. Thank you. Okay, Shintaro versus other representations of depression in media. Okay, so two notable anime that came out recently that do deal with this topic are the movie A Silent Voice, which is based on a manga of the same name. You may know this best for having a deaf female protagonist, but both of the main characters also deal with depression in serious ways over the course of the series or movie, depending on your medium. And how they developed those issues and how they work through them are both explored. The series Orange is also one that deals with depression in very serious ways. I'd say a lot of the differences between Kagerou and these series is that uh, the characters dealing with depression is more of a central plot, whereas in Kagerou it's like Shintaro is depressed, but also he has to, not get murdered by his possessed teacher slash friend, depending on your route.
Yeah.
Where do you read it? I think you can buy Orange through Orange is available legally. I think you can get it through Comixology. A Silent Voice is published by Yen Press, and the movie is available on Netflix.
Depending on the region,
Next slide.
probably. Because
Yeah, I'm
Netflix,
sorry. It's not
yay.
available on Netflix, probably in Europe, because Netflix hates Europe and also happiness.
As the chat might have realized, I'm in Europe.
Shintaro as a representation of depression. A lot of stuff right as far as using Shintaro to represent depression. He has pretty realistic symptoms. That said, because of the whole of Shintaro's story arc, there's going to be some people that connect with it a lot better than other people. Particularly the way that his symptoms get a lot better as he connects more with the rest of the Mekakushidan. Mekakushidan, I'm sorry. For some reason, my ability to pronounce Japanese just flew off. Anyhow, basically, for some people, when they're depressed, getting outside and interacting more with people really does help. And other people, that's just not really enough, and they need therapy or meds or whatever else. So it's going to be really personal how realistic that narrative is to you. Next slide.
Next character.
It's Kano time. So, long-term trauma, as you may have thought. Everybody in Kagerou has trauma, but if we're talking about a character whose arc is focused around on consistent, repeated, and long-term trauma, this particular trash gremlin is the only one that we can pick.
You got all of your fans for freaking gremlins. I love it. Moving on.
Look, all of my faves are terrible except Ayato, who is a perfect angel that has never done anything wrong except in that one route we don't talk about. So, symptoms of trauma. Trauma is an emotional response to an upsetting event. It generally, when we talk about it, it comes in two flavors: short term and long term. Short term trauma responses are things like shock and denial, but in the long term, people can have things like flashbacks, changes in their relationships, changes in how they respond with emotions, and even physical symptoms like headaches, nausea. When people experience intense or repeated trauma, they can develop psychological disorders like PTSD, mood disorders, things like that. Again, we're not going to try to diagnose the characters, but we are going to examine how the repeated and persistent trauma that Kano experiences might have shaped the character and how it compares to other characters and real life. Next slide.
Yep.
I don't really know. In response to the chat, I'm not really sure how he associates himself with pain. I'm not really sure what you mean there, but if you want to sort of get your thoughts together, that can be something we discuss after the panel. So, Kano and trauma in Kagerou project. Basically, like I said, everybody in the Kagerou project experiences trauma. This is not a happy media project, but it's just inherent in his story. His early childhood includes parental abuse, his mother's murder, and then his murder after he's adopted. He witnesses his sister's death. Then he is threatened and blackmailed by his adopted parent. And then he participates in the August 15th and time loop. And no matter what route you're in, it's bad. So, next slide.
Mhm.
A lot of Kano's behaviors are basically ones that you can kind of see as related to trauma, even though it's never really stated, to my knowledge, as being linked. He has he has difficulty controlling his anger. I keep thinking of that one passage in the novel where he is pretending to be Ayano and just boiling over with rage at Shintaro. His low opinion of himself, his reluctance to trust or open up to others, and the deliberate emotional distance that he puts between himself and basically everyone he interacts with. All of these are things that can be related to trauma.
Next slide.
Oh, the depiction of trauma in media. Trauma is a really common element in a lot of media. Authors like to use trauma in making interesting and sympathetic characters. It's often used in justifying villainous characters, providing reasons for less honorable characters, or making heroic characters do things that we would normally find unjustifiable. Sometimes authors make use trauma to show how gritty a setting is, like repeatedly traumatizing characters just to show that this world's horrible. I have a picture of Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan because that's basically the plot of Attack on Titan. Let's just make these characters sad repeatedly so we can show how horrible this world is. Meanwhile, Zuko is a very good example of a character who has a lot of trauma, and so we kind of understand some of the things that he did that were morally questionable because they were often related to him being kind of traumatized and not that uh in a great headspace, let's put it that way. I love the boy, but he made some bad decisions. Anyhow, next line.
Mhm.
Slide. Ugh. I'm trying to use PowerPoint like my voice typing program. Help me.
Sorry, I'm on the other side of
Okay.
the world. I cannot help you. Neither can chat.
You say this to me too often. Anyhow, Kano is a representation of people with trauma. So, on one hand, if Kano was written intentionally as a representation of people with trauma, he's actually really realistic in a lot of ways. I see you in the chat going honorable and making jokes about Zuko. You're valid. Sorry for getting distracted. That said, if Kana was not written intentionally as that, it's hard to tell because it's never really made text. And to be fair, Jin isn't obligated to do that. We as readers are arguably able to do that work, but it would have been nice if somebody had made that connection and it was made text a little bit. Also, I think it's important to point out that there's a lot of time, especially in the music videos and the anime, spent to making Kano look sketchy or like he might be a villain. And if we take him as representation of trauma survivors, we have to acknowledge that as a kind of questionable decision. So,
Next
next
slide?
slide. Do we have a
Yes.
next slide, or is it just the
No, we don't.
bibliography?
Haha,
All
we have
right.
gotten to the end. Fantastic.
Well, then let's show them the bibliography, just in case. We have a bibliography. If anybody would like us to message them that, we can. But it's honestly a lot of different scholarly articles and a couple of different things on media tropes.
Yes, but also this panel will at some point end up on YouTube. So if you need it later, you'll be able to look at it then. We also have an image source.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Co-op Marin, we couldn't go with Ayano because that would be way too many, and this panel would be way too long.
Yeah, no. If y'all let me talk about Ayano and how she was a representation of depression, I would. Oh God.
Yeah, we would love to talk about all our kids here, That's sadly not happening. Maybe next year that would be fun. With a different topic, maybe. Uh,
Hmm.
so we actually still have quite a bit of time actually left. So if people are want to have discussions with us or with each other, we are open for that. I know there was some discussion further up throughout while we were talking, so that we could not interact with us as much as we wanted to. But feel free to
I've
do
seen
that.
someone saying that Takane could be a representation of some symptoms of autism. Like,
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, um, yes.
I think so,
Am I
possibly,
allowed to
but
say that I had canon the entire UK quartet is autistic because that's kind of what's happening in my life?
yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, like I'm not sure that it was Jin's intention, but that's where I'm going.
It's often like authors not like it's not author's intentions, but then we can actually see it and interpret characters, which can be really
Hmm.
nice.
Yes, thank you. Whoever wrote that because it's too small for me to see the username, but I love you.
Oh, hello, the daydream system. Yes, thank you. So I think a lot of it we can't like the characters aren't explicit anything, but I think we can read into at least several of them and see at least certain aspects of autism. I
Mhm.
agree.
Yeah, no. Honestly, yes. And yeah, no, Mary and social isolation is also a really interesting thing. And yeah, a lot of the characters do have autistic traits. Like,
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I think I could probably make a cogent argument for just about everybody if I wanted to.
That can be your next year's panel.
Oh, God. Would they let me just talk about my autism head canons for like a half an hour? Would they do that?
I have no idea. Oh, video game hyperfixation, possibly.
And okay, GG Horseman. Like, so basically, the reason why I said that was problematic is the idea of the technical definition of a hikikomori is that it's somebody who isolates himself and doesn't have another pre-existing condition. So because he's isolating himself because of depression, he is by definition not technically a hikikomori. He's somebody with very severe depression who is not willing to come out of his room and is acting in a way that is typical of a hikikomori. That said, the definition of hikikomori is currently being set by a Japanese government agency and not psychologists. So it's very much a gray area.
Yes, and then you have a lot of different characters in anime that is stated to be hikikomori. So you get a lot of perceptions about what the hikikomori is through anime, which may or may not be correct. Also, Magpie talking about Ayano for an hour next year. That sounds amazing.
Yes. Yeah. The problem is that basically Japan currently has a bunch of people who are going into their room and not coming out, and they're very nervous about it. And so they're trying to classify it as possibly a psychological diagnosis, but they're not sure. Some of the people are saying it might just be like due to social pressure. Some people are like, no, it's a psychological, culture specific psychological disorder, but they don't actually know. And it is unsurprisingly hard to study a population that doesn't want to socially interact.
Yeah. Also, Q here. I don't think I pronounce your name correctly. Yeah, it's quite possible he's calling himself Hikikomori due to the misconception about what a Hikikomori is.
And yeah, Kova Martin, you've definitely got a point. Because it's a social issue and because it's very topical, it's a little bit difficult. I will say Hikikomori and NEET are necessarily two different things. Yeah. Like, hikineets are a thing, but not all hikikomori are neat.
Yeah, so it's a lot of gray area here, which is why there's a lot of discussion and disagreements about what is or is not, I don't know, valid. Um, but that's also kind of why we were discussing him in the first place in this panel,
Mm-hmm.
and he did fit quite a bit into depression, and which is also something we saw him have, as you said, in chat before he showed symptoms of before he decided to shut himself in.
A thing that's useful to like talk about when we talk about mental illnesses is that modern psychology is a really like modern Western psychology, I should say that. And unfortunately, even though we're talking about Japanese stuff, Japanese psychology is really strongly influenced by German medicine for reasons that are historical and involve like the world wars and it's all this stuff. But it's a really young profession, and like it's we think of it as old and established, but a lot of the classifications between mental illnesses and stuff are arbitrary and based on a lot of studies that in some cases are really in fact very shitty.
And also
So
often can be different based on what country you're in as well, since they generally
yeah,
have their own definitions in the different countries. So what might define someone as one thing in, let's say, America might not be the same in the UK.
there are some psychological uh, like diagnoses that are not available anymore in the US that technically still exist in some European countries. It's a thing. So,
Yeah. Well,
and
social
also there's
anxiety
a
as
very
well
good
might be.
possibility that some of us are just projecting. That's what fictional characters are for sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And also, yes, Shintaro definitely has at least whether he has clinical anxiety or not is a different question, but he definitely like is he anxious a lot of the time? Yes.
Yes.
Also, like please stop calling yourselves dumb. Nobody is dumb here. All are very smart, and I am basing this on the evidence that you got into Kagerou project, and that makes you cool.
That's valid. That's very valid.
Hmm.
So yes, we are. It's actually a quarter to the hour now. So
Yeah.
if people
So
want to start migrating over to the next couple of things, I think there's two things going on in 15 minutes. They are allowed to. It's been super fun, you guys. This was, as I said, my first panel, and you guys have been a great chat. And hopefully we can do some more later at some point.
yeah, we're gonna be both of us will be hanging around the general chats and in general also we did have our contact information on the thing if you want to
Yes, I
like
can go
come
back to
past
the beginning
anybody's
as well.
Tumblr and send us asks, that would be cool.
Yes, I will hopefully be able to do some more Kagerou project art later. And Ninth Feather has a lot of good fic. Go read her fic; it's amazing.
Yes, thank you all for coming.
Yes, it's been really great. Thank you all. We hope you have a great panel, a great con for the rest of the evening or day or wherever you are, in what time zone you are in. And yes, thank you all who have followed me on this on Twitch. I will probably continue to do art streams if anyone is interested later. And yes, it's been amazing. Thank you all. Happy 15th.
Bye.
Goodbye.